With the release of Marvel Spider-Man 2 last year, we now have 17 different Spider-Man games, so today let's go through and rank all of the web-slinging systems from these iconic Marvel games, worst to best. Credit to CGR Gaming and everyone else who provided gameplay in the background. Let's get into it. At the bottom of the list, guys, we have Spider-Man and Spider-Man Enter Electro. I'm combining these two games because they essentially have the same system, and calling this web-slinging is honestly generous, because a more accurate description is a glorified triple jump. You can stick to walls and climb up them at a snail's pace, and you can swing a grand total of twice before you drop like a rock, so yeah, there's really not much to this swinging system. It's slow and boring, but it got the job done, and was the template for future games. Following on from that, we have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 1 movie game. This system is exactly the same, but you can swing forever, and you can actually control your elevation with the camera. Other than that though, it's the exact same shit with a little bit of extra polish. And speaking of extra polish, next up is the swinging from the LEGO superhero games. This is by far the best of the, automated swinging systems that originated from the PS1 era, as you have a lot of control over it and you have the up-to-date animations. That being said though, it's a poor excuse for a swinging system, and there's not really much point in engaging in it when you can just fly around the city as Iron Man. As cool as it was seeing Spider-Man fight alongside the Avengers in a AAA game, this swinging system was not it. I appreciate the new animations and what have you, but it's just so stunted. There's no momentum or flow in the slightest. Especially since the first Insomniacs Spider-Man game came out 2 years prior to this and was fresh in everyone's mind. And when you compare this swinging system to that, it's night and day. This is just awful. It's so stunted and scripted, there's barely any complexity, it's just not good in the slightest. That being said though, at least the graphics look better, and there is some interaction with the environment, which saves it from being in the bottom of the barrel. Next up are the swinging systems used in Edge of Time and Shattered Dimensions. Once again, I combined these two because there's very little differences between them. Once again, there's barely any speed or momentum to be had in these systems. However, I am going to give them credit since these games mostly take place in claustrophobic environments, and the camera does a pretty decent job for the most part, which is a pretty big accomplishment in my opinion. It certainly could have been a lot worse, however, in its current state, the swinging systems in these games are passable at best. Disney Infinity was probably the last thing you'd expect to create a semi-decent swinging system for Spider-Man, but hey, it did it. You can actually achieve a pretty good amount of speed with this system, as well as a lot of height, making traveling around the city a piece of cake. That being said though, it still suffers from the same problems of being basic and primitive with not a lot of complexity, and whilst the graphics do look pretty good, the animations look very stiff and unnatural. Still, it's better than I was expecting, and I think it's a pretty average swinging system. Alright, now for the swinging systems that are actually worth talking about, and we're starting things off with Spider-Man 3. Really, aside from the unpolished nature and the fact that it was a complete step down from Spider-Man 2 in terms of quality, there's really not that much bad with this swinging system. You can go reasonably fast, you have good control over the camera, and you have good control over your positioning, and there's interactions with the environment. Hell, there's even a degree of momentum to the game, just like in Spider-Man 2, and at the very least when it comes to Peter's animations, they seem to be a step up from Spider-Man 2. Unfortunately, this system is held back by poor collision with the environment, a very janky nature, which is a reoccurring theme with Spider-Man games of the early 2000s, and the fact that the Spider-Man 2 system, engineered over 3 years prior, was just better than this. You had a greater sense of speed, everything really. I wouldn't consider this system to be bad per se, just a step backwards from the system that we already experienced a couple of years prior. The TASM 2 swinging, on the other hand, is one that I hold personal hatred against because it was a downgrade from a swinging system we experienced a couple of years prior with the TASM 1 swinging. I actually think that swinging was very underrated and very cinematic, and this one, on the other hand, just feels very janky and a complete downgrade from what we had. The new additions like the slingshot and swinging from both hands feels nice, but it feels like they took one step forward and 2 steps back. That's not to say it's completely irredeemable though. Just like most swinging systems from this point forward, you can achieve a great amount of speed, and it's very cinematic as far as swingings go, but it just doesn't feel like a step forward in comparison to the TASM 1 swinging. I do think this system gets a bit too much hate. The TASM 2 game is one of the worst Spider-Man games ever made, and that seems to be the consensus within the community. And I also agree with it, but I think this swinging system has a couple of redeeming aspects, even if it's not my thing. Spider-Man Web of Shadows is easily the most overrated web swinging in the entire series, and it's not even close. You can achieve breathtaking speeds in this game, you know, traveling across the city, but in order to do it, you have to color your skin blue and give yourself a German accent, because Peter turns into Nightcrawler when he does this swinging. Unlike in the new Spider-Man 2 game, where you have technology which assists in the web swinging, in this game it feels like the game's code is catching fire trying to render all of the short-range teleportations that Peter is performing. Unfortunately, when you choose to interact with the swinging itself, it's not that much better. It's a step up from what Spider-Man 3 introduced, and it seems to be based around that swinging system. There's a lot of interaction with the environment, which is good, however the animations look ridiculous, very unnatural, the movements are jerky and not realistic in the slightest, and it just doesn't appeal to me. Web of Shadows is compared to the new Spider-Man 2 game in terms of plot, however it genuinely blows my mind that people can look at this and unironically say with a straight face that this game's web swinging is better than the newer games, when this looks like something out of fucking Roblox of all things. You can achieve ridiculously high speeds with the Web of Shadows system, but it feels like you're breaking the game in order to do it, compared to the newer systems where it feels like the swinging itself allows you to reach high speeds by engaging with the game's mechanics. If I had to sum up the TASM 1 swinging in one word, it would be cinematic. This swinging looks gorgeous, even over a decade later. The over-the-shoulder perspective just adds a lot of immersion to this swinging, and I honestly cannot get enough of it. The impressive thing about this system though is how polished it is. Compared to Web of Shadows or Spider-Man 3, this truly does feel like an upgrade, at the very least in terms of technical performance. The new web rush mechanic is also pretty cool, and the first-person perspective is nice, making you feel like you're actually Spider-Man. It's not very fast compared to other systems, at the very least in terms of getting from X to Y, but I think what makes this system so unique is how much height you get with the swinging. I mean, fuck me, you can clear entire skyscrapers with how much height you get from one swing. It's fucking insane. Don't get me wrong though, I'm not 100% biased to this system, as I can see its main Achilles heel, that being the lack of complexity. Aside from holding RT and occasionally pressing the right bumper, there's not that much to do with this swinging system. You can interact with the environment a little bit, but it pales in comparison to systems that we would get a few years down the line. It's one of my favorites for sure, but this is as high as I can rank it. Let's be honest, the best thing about Ultimate Spider-Man all these years later is the cel-shaded graphics. It really does feel like a comic book to come to life, and I can't get enough of the graphics and presentation for this game. As for the web swinging itself, it doesn't seem to do anything particularly good, but it doesn't have anything bad about it either, making it one of the most well-rounded swinging systems we've ever seen, even all these years later. The standalone mechanic for this game is that you can give yourself more height by literally climbing up the web mid-swing, which is fucking beautiful to see. That, in addition with the double jump, gives you a great control over Spider-Man's movements, and it really feels like a joy to play. That being said, however, despite being a very fast swinging system for its age, unfortunately it's not very complex, and I think that's what holds it back from being any higher. The godfather of the physics-based Spider-Man swinging systems, we have Spider-Man 2. The OG. What can be said about this system that hasn't already been gassed up? Treyarch really did capture lightning in a bottle with this game, as while yeah, sure, it hasn't aged great in terms of graphics, the swinging itself can hardly be faulted. Are there unpolished aspects to this game? Of course there are. You know, with older Spider-Man games, there really was a level of unpolished nature to them. However, I'm not as harsh towards this game because it was the first one. You know, Web of Shadows, Spider-Man 3, they had the chance to improve upon the flaws that this game had, but they didn't, which is why I'm much harsher towards them. This game, that was the first one, it laid the groundwork, so I'm a little bit more lenient towards it. It's fast, it's cinematic, there's a lot of complexity, you can interact with the environment. There's really not that much fault with the systems going forward on the list. Taking the silver medal and coming in joint second place is the Insomniac swinging from the PS4 game and the Miles Morales sequel. If Ultimate Spider-Man was a well-rounded swinging experience, then this swinging system is all of that and so much more. Gorgeous graphics, pretty fast swinging compared to some of the swinging systems we've talked about, near endless interaction with the environment, and a lot of complexity that people really don't talk about. The camera almost never gets in the way, and unlike previous Spider-Man games, the animations are pretty much flawless, and there is a lot of polish with this game that really doesn't get talked about all that much. It genuinely confuses me how people can turn around and say that these swinging systems are quote-unquote automated compared to something like Edge of Time or the PS1 games. Like, I feel like they just didn't play it or engage in the mechanics. If you pointed a gun at my head and asked me to say which one is superior out of these two games, I would say the Miles Morales swinging. Updated animations, they made it even more complex, not just with the swinging techniques, but also introducing Miles' abilities to further enhance the swinging, and it's a Christmas-themed aesthetic, which makes it one of the most unique experiences for a Spider-Man game. These are fantastic web swinging systems overall, and they truly have stood the test of time. That being said, however, Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 did kind of make those games a little redundant by comparison. They basically took the groundworks laid with the Insomniac games and further improved it across the board, making it faster, even more momentum, even more complexity, new techniques like the slingshot which further add to the gameplay, as well as introducing the web wings and the programmable matter technology to further enhance mobility. There's so much momentum to all of your actions, whether it's getting a small speed boost from the spider arms mid-swinging, or transitioning from the web wings back into swinging and vice versa. This swinging system just feels like it has no competitor. Would I say this system is perfect? Absolutely not. It's fucking fantastic across the board, but I would love for Insomniac to further develop the swinging system in Marvel Spider-Man 3, keep refining it, keep adding new things to it that assist and complement the gameplay. Of course I would love to see them improve, but as of right now, this is the definitive swinging experience for a Spider-Man game, and it's not even close. But those are just my opinions. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Feel free to join the Discord server and subscribe to the channel for more content and more live streams. Thanks guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.